when something like this happens and it's really disruptive for your life. And it's really, everybody has these things, right? I will say that I have not been on my normal routine. I have not been as active as I normally am in the last 2 weeks because I have been spending days in the hospital for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours at a time in the hospital room with my dad. That's not a normal routine for me. Hey there, welcome to the Female Health Solution podcast, where we discuss women's health, hormones, and everything else in between. Join me as we dive into the tools that you need to live your healthiest life. All right, welcome back to the Female Health Solution podcast, everyone. I got a new setup here. I've been podcasting for about 5 years now, and I just recently changed some things around. So I have a different background. I have a different setup. Hopefully the sound quality is improved as it should be, right? I thought I would just give a little update for this one here. I do a lot of education. I do a lot of just talking about different health, obviously the Female Health Solution podcast. That's what it's called. But I would love to just kind of update you on my personal life a little bit more, just because it can be really difficult to understand more about what motivates somebody to do what they do. Like, why would I spend my time doing a podcast, doing a YouTube channel, doing all this content, putting all this information out there, etc.? Because it really comes down to something that I'm truly passionate about. And it hits home for me a lot. And there are different points in my life where this becomes so true. And so obviously just a blatant sign that I want to keep doing what I'm doing more and more and more. So some of this, some of you are familiar with my story about how I got started in just really the female health space, how I was suffering with ovarian cysts and I really struggled and I really could not get a solution to those problems until I really started diving into Eastern medicine and working with all of that. So it completely changed my life. It changed my life. And that's how I started doing all of this work, right? Sharing this information, having this be the difference maker for so many people. Well, now other things have happened. And I know when my kids were a lot younger, they were okay with being shared on social media. And there was a point then where they said, nope, we don't want to be online as much, Mom, or we don't want to be in your stuff. And I said, fine. So I don't really talk about my family that much. It's just not, but a little bit here and there. I do share within the groups and women that I work with when they talk about stories. I will share stories and examples, but I don't really blatantly share a lot of that. But for this one, I'll share a little bit about what's going on for me and how I process some of this stuff and work through it in real time. So just to give you that transparency, that real example of, listen, this is really what's happening in my life. Like, this is not all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns per se. So some of the things that have been going on real life with my family. Now I'm going to talk about my family of origin. And some of the things that I have done to process this and walk through it, work through it. And I really got a great opportunity to use a lot of the tools and tactics that I talk about and teach about a lot, real time, firsthand. For example, being able to calm my nervous system, prepare myself, and recognizing when I am having a trauma response. And then also realizing that for the first time in my life, I have people around me that are supportive, that are caring, that are looking out for my best interest. Just all the way around, which is very new. So like different responses, and some of them, I had a friend say something to me, and she texted, I was texting her about the situation, and she texted me back. And she texted something and I just didn't know how to respond for a while. And she was like, I just made you uncomfortable, didn't I? I was like, yeah. Because she texted me that my dad was lucky that he had me in his life. And I was like, I don't know how to respond to that. I feel really weird and uncomfortable. Sometimes I have a hard time taking compliments or things, which is common for people with trauma responses, I know. I'm working on it. I have therapy again next week. Don't worry. No. Also a trauma response, making jokes out of these things. Of course. So what had happened was my dad went into the hospital, or actually my mom had to call the ER and take my dad to the hospital because he was really, really sick and couldn't breathe. Now, it was a very dire situation. He was in full respiratory failure. He was septic. So he had pneumonia really, really, really bad. And pneumonia is something that untreated, it can kill you. Like for those of you that were Muppets fans, I grew up on the Muppets. Jim Henson died of pneumonia, right? This is a thing. If you don't get it treated, you can go downhill really, really fast. And my dad was at that point. So it's very scary. So they took him in, all these things. And it was this whole thing of, my sister, I have a sister that lives next door to my parents. And so she is there a lot of the time. So there's, part of this is like who communicates what and when and how I find out and all of these things. It's all very like, what is happening? And then I don't know exactly what's happening. This was the day before Easter. And then what's happening for Easter? Are we still doing that? Like what's going on? So Easter ended up getting canceled. My mom was distracted, like it's an event, right? I don't know the right word that I'm looking for this right now, but we ended up going to see my dad in the hospital on Easter. And it just is so interesting. Like it's such an experience to see someone that you've known literally your whole life and see them in a completely different state. And then to like work through that. And so we visited for a little bit and everything. And they were pumping him full of all these antibiotics. They had drained fluid from around his lungs, all these things. So, then I went back a couple days later and I actually was just going to stop in the morning before I started work for the day. And I thought, I'll pop in for like an hour because the hospital that he was at, because he had some other heart issues going on. So they took him to the hospital that had the cardiac unit, et cetera. So the hospital he was at was actually closest to my house. So I have 3 other siblings and we live in around the Twin Cities. And there's multiple hospitals, right, in the Twin Cities. But he was at the hospital that's really close to my house, 10 minutes away, 12 minutes away, because of the cardiac unit there. So I was like, I'll pop over Tuesday morning and I'll go see him real quick. And then I'll start my day. No problem. I can totally do that. I walk into the room and I was like, oh my gosh. Like I'm going to just say it like this. He looked almost dead. And it freaked me out. And I was like, this is not okay. I tried to talk to him. He was not as coherent. Now, the other thing about some of these things is that it's trying not to get like frustrated with the situation because you're like, okay, you should have gone in before, Dad. You should have gotten this taken care of, but he didn't, right? And then some of the communication, it's really hard because at that point he was not sleeping. He really didn't feel good, all this stuff, but he also has some hearing loss and he doesn't wear hearing aids. So then there's some of that going on. And that's a little, that doesn't make the situation easier at the time, right? So, but when I walked into that room, it was terrifying. And I had to take a minute and like figure out like, okay, what's going on? And I was like, okay, this is not okay. This is not good. I'm contacting my sister. I canceled my day. I was supposed to travel that weekend. I canceled my travel plans because I was like, this is really like someone needs to be here to make sure that he's going to do okay. So between that communication between me and my sisters, making sure that someone was there actually during the day. And then my husband actually took the time to like, he would go and drive and pick up my mom and take my mom there, on days that either me or my sisters couldn't be there in the morning and during the day. And I moved my schedule around and canceled things and changed things to make all this happen essentially. And sorry, I'm not going to be a good storyteller with this because I still am working through this and processing it. That's the other thing. It's okay. It's okay if you're not a good storyteller with it, or if you're not good at explaining it right off the bat as you're still going through it. because your brain and your body are still processing things. So give yourself grace. I'm saying this out loud to you, but I'm really also saying it to myself. See, processing real time, all of these things. So that was just a couple of weeks ago that it was real bad, real bad. It was really important that he was, able to start to improve. So, I mean, for that first week, honestly, it was very up and down. Like some things would get better and then some things would get worse. Certain labs would get better, certain labs would get worse. And then they eventually just put in a chest tube that drained everything from his lung, because pneumonia is fluid in the lungs. He also had fluid outside of his lungs. So it was a lot of pressure. It's a lot of strain on the body. And he was very, very weak and had a hard time eating, had a hard time sleeping, So it's a big effort, I want to say, for everybody to rally around and come together and support somebody who needs that much help and assistance and everything with, and he was in the ICU, but just to make sure that he was okay and got things that he needed, or, whew, it was a lot. There's other details involved, that aren't necessarily relevant, but just to know that for the past 2 weeks, every day there's been updates that I've either sent or siblings have sent, benchmarks, working with a team of doctors and nurses and understanding what's going on, what procedures they're doing, what medications they have him on, what they're changing around, what they're monitoring, between his heart, between his lungs, between his kidneys. And it was just a lot and very emotionally draining, mentally draining, and frightening at some points. So with that whole thing that went on, what was also really just, again, when I said having people around you, there were some people who texted me and I didn't text them back. Shoot, I just thought of 2 other people that I have to text back that I didn't text back. Sorry. But having people, like when I text people or let them know, hey, yeah, sorry, buddy, my dad's been in the hospital. Like everybody says things, oh, like I'm, hope he does well, or, oh, sorry to hear that, just the nice, kind, I want to say polite thing, which is nice, which is very nice. But then I also have friends that are like, okay, yep, make sure you're staying hydrated. Make sure you're getting enough sleep yourself. Make sure you're really de-stressing at the end of the day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. And that's what I would tell people, right? So to have those people mirror things back to me is really, really helpful. And to realize like I do need to start my day and put extra positivity into my day, put extra affirmations, extra mood boosting things, extra adaptogens right now for me, extra in the morning and at night, because every day for the past 2 weeks has been a freaking roller coaster of things, up and down, left, right, sideways. It is really, really hard. And even if, like just the other day, Hallie and I were talking about this, where we were saying, okay, this is our day. This is what's going to happen. And in the morning, we do this thing where we sit and we have our coffee together and connect in the morning before the day goes. Like we were talking about the amazing things that are happening in our life. And, okay, here's where things are right now, but here's where they're going to be. And this, and, encouraging for each other. And at the end of the day, when we were going to bed, we were both laying in bed and we were like, yeah, none of that happened today. Like we talked about, did it? We could try again tomorrow, but holy crap. Like I'm just mentally spent right now. And it was wild. Making sure that sorry, I know you can see me have a brain fart, right? Which I don't normally do when I'm doing these things, but that is what's going on right now with a lot of this. My brain will literally stop because I think of something, or a picture, like the image of my dad when he was really sick pops into my head for a second because I'm still processing a lot of that. So it stops my thought process. And to give myself grace and to know I, logically can work around it and be like, okay, yep, that was really tough. That was something my brain and body are responding. It's okay to think about these things like that. That's fine. I'm going to keep moving forward with things and keep processing and keep working on things. And that's going to be the best thing for me. making sure that I go for walks outside as much as I can, gentle walks, more adaptogens, more, morning motivation and positivity, and the same thing at night. And to really slow down and be measured and careful about what I'm doing and where I'm putting my energy, because a lot of it is getting used up with a lot of the, just with my dad being in the hospital. Because he's still there. He's still there. He may get out in a couple of days and move to a transition facility, something where they do like PT and stuff until he's strong enough to be at home. And it was one of the things, like in the hospital, the doctors and nurses kept asking my dad things like, well, what's your normal routine? And what's your normal thing? And like, oh, do you use a walker or a cane? Because he's in his, he's 76 now, 70, he's going to be 77 this year. So they'll ask, oh, do you use a walking implement? And he'll be like, no. Stubborn guy that he is, right? How he responds. He'll be, no, I don't use any of that. He's like, 2 weeks ago, I was using the chainsaw, cutting down trees. And he was. That's true. He's never needed a walker. He's never needed anything like that. And he was cutting down a bunch of trees and stuff. So he's really got knocked down and out. And then again, the other frustrating thing for me personally is just like, Dad, if you weren't feeling good, you could have said something to me, to anyone. But in this process, this is just kind of how it's been. When something like this happens and it's really disruptive for your life, and it's really, everybody has these things, right? I will say that I have not been on my normal routine. I have not been as active as I normally am in the last 2 weeks because I have been spending days in the hospital for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours at a time in the hospital room with my dad. That's not a normal routine for me. When I come home, I'm scrambling and trying to catch up on work and other things in life and all of that. And it's a lot more to manage and navigate. But to realize like, okay, like it's progressing, it's going in the right direction. We're getting good outcomes here, right? Where things are going the way that they should go. But also to realize I still need to make sure that I don't get burned out by this and I don't get put in a bad position by this, that the stress of this is not going to keep me down for long. It's just really tough. And we're coming into a very busy season of life, of course, right? Of course. I have, 3 teenagers in the house. I have a senior, a sophomore, and an 8th grader. And so my son will be graduating. So there's a lot of activity. We have something just about every weekend. I counted yesterday, actually. Between now and the time my son leaves for college, there's about 5 weekends that we don't have something. It's mid-April right now. So until the end of August or Labor Day weekend, right? I got something just about every weekend between senior stuff, birthday stuff, 4-H, weddings, all of it, orientation, it's just crazy. Anyway, so it's a busy season. It's easy to get swept up in it, and it's easy to let things totally slide. And it's also one thing when these things happen to think about it like, oh, I haven't been on my normal routine. I haven't been working out as diligently or as hard or whatever. Yeah, but I've still taken the time to do workouts. I still have gone to yoga regularly, gone for walks. I haven't pushed myself though as hard as I would have, but I'm still doing that to take care of myself. That way, starting next week, I can just jump right into my normal routine stuff and I don't have to worry about it. That's not the right word. Worry about it. Just kind of flow back into life without the stress. And it's really easy to think about this time frame being a setback. The stress that again, like if you look at it from a stress standpoint, the increase in stress response and everything else, it's pretty big. But I'm not going to see it as I don't want to look at it as a setback. This is just part of life. Healing is not linear. Life is not step by step by step exact, right? It's about how we move through these things and how we get to the other side and where we take it from there. And the biggest thing that I want to continue to do is understanding my own body and response and giving my body the time that it needs to move through the stressful responses. My normal stress response for things is to work harder and burn myself out and not let myself process or feel anything. Shut down completely emotionally, not show anything, and just laser beam to the other side. That's not healthy. So it's going through this process slower, letting myself mentally process, being okay with how I'm working through it. Because the most important thing in all of this, again, besides my dad getting better, he's going to get out of the hospital, all that stuff. But I want to make sure that I am going to be okay on the other side of it too. Do you know what I mean? I want to make sure I'm okay. I want to make sure I'm going to do well, that I'm not going to have time to recover myself then. So that's my process here. That's what's going on right now. It's kind of a different topic, different podcast. So yeah, but this is how we'll be doing things now. New setup, new things. And I'm going to be sharing more. Yeah, I'm just giving you guys all the info, background info, behind the scenes things. And hopefully it's helpful. Because again, I never want to talk about anything in my life that's not true or that's not accurate or that's not right. When I talk about, people struggle and sometimes life just knocks you down and you have these things happen and here's how you move through it. I have the same thing happen to me. I'm literally going through it right now. And here's how I'm doing it and focusing and taking care of myself. So, and it doesn't have to be perfect too. There are definitely some things that I have tried to implement and I was like, nope, can't do it. I've had to go to bed like an hour earlier every night. I need way more sleep right now. And I'm working that in to make sure that I can be that much more productive and effective the next day. So, all right. Thank you for tuning in, you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you want me to, dive into anything else about this, but I just appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate, everyone who listens and the feedback that you give. I do take it to heart. Questions that you have, I love. And I just, again, thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you guys later. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. If you would like more information, just head on over to drbethwesty.com for all the show notes and information from today's episode. And if you're looking for more community, more support, you can find and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and I would love to see you there.